Do you want a chance to win 10,000 big ones? Well, you're in luck because Camel Crush Cigarettes is having a dart smoking contest this week. I'm just kidding. Artlist is having its biggest creators competition of the year, the Artlist Creative Fest. All you have to do to participate is submit a video about your passion and soundtrack it using Artlist. So hey, maybe your passion is chiefing some Camel Crushes. Now you have an opportunity to win $10,000 for doing so. All you have to do is make a sweet video of you chiefing some camis and throw some Artlist music on there. You never know what might happen. I mean, it literally says on the thing, it says no matter what type of creator you are, you can show off your skills for a chance to win amazing prizes. This little shindig is brought to you by Nanlite and Moment, of course, and then Zion, I believe it's pronounced, the gimbal company. Everybody knows the gimbal company, Zion. So, yeah, I know what you're thinking. Brae, I don't have an Artlist subscription. I can't participate. Yes, you can, because it's open to everybody, and you can participate even with a free Artlist account. Maybe you're ready to finally get that dream film camera of yours, the X-Pan 2. Well, this $10,000 probably won't get you quite there after taxes and fees, but it'll get you pretty damn close. Or maybe you're thinking, I want to be a little bit more practical. You can get a pretty nice Subaru Impreza for the same amount of money. How you spend your $10,000 is none of my business. Maybe you want to buy a whole pallet of Camel Crush cigarettes. Go ahead and do so. Anyway, the information is in the description. You can click the link to learn more, but you have until October 21st to submit your video. So get cracking, get creating, and go win yourself an X-Pan 2 or something of that value. All right, so we're about 3/4 of the way through the year now, and I've made a good number of videos. I've taken a decent amount of photos, but inevitably throughout the process, I've made some videos and taken some photos that just aren't quite worthy of seeing the light of day. Now, me being the crafty wizard that I am, instead of letting these videos and photos go to waste, what I've decided to do is take all of the best parts from these failed videos and Frankenstein together a little 2022 failed videos recap. And by doing this, I can actually make it seem like I kind of know what I'm doing, when in reality, I don't have a fucking clue as to what I'm doing.
Oh God!
So don't get it twisted, I am still at peak levels of idiocy, which the dictionary defines as the state of being an idiot, which I find absolutely hilarious and also very relatable. So anyway, to start out this failed videos recap, we're going to take it all the way back to April when my lovely girlfriend Alicia and I took a little trip to one of my favorite towns in the United States, little coastal town in Oregon called Cannon Beach. Now, this was a time in my life where I was seriously considering doing illegal things to obtain a Leica M6. Now, luckily for me, my buddy Vic lent me his, along with a 35mm and 50mm lens. I believe they were both Voigtlanders, if I'm not mistaken. I'm very glad that I decided to borrow an M6 instead of making a pact with the devil to get one, because after shooting with it for about a month, I came to the conclusion that it is just not the camera for me. This thing would have to be priced at about $350 for me to even consider getting one, and I'm not trying to dock the craftsmanship or the mechanical build quality of it, because it's obviously an exceptional camera in that aspect. I just have a very hard time getting down with the rangefinder system. In just no world other than me having $3 billion could I justify shelling out a down payment on a car for a Leica M6 and a lens. I just have a far better time shooting on something like a Canon AE1, but hey, that's just me. Alicia was shooting on her, at the time, newly acquired Pentax 6x7, which she now acknowledges as the best film camera ever made, so it looks like I'll keep her around a little bit longer. I was also shooting on my Pentax along with the M6. I do love spending time in Cannon Beach in the winter and spring. There's something real fun about those stormy days on the coast, although we actually lucked out with pretty good weather most of the time we were there. Alicia was shooting on Gold 200 in her Pentax, and I had Portra 400 in mine. In the Leica, I was shooting Portra 800 and Fuji Superia 400. There's a couple photos that I like, but I've fully accepted my fate as a medium format slut through and through. And hey, since I was clearly in the mood of mixing formats this trip, I said f*** it and brought the 16mm along as well. I was shooting Eastman XX through my Ultra 16 Krasnogorsk 3 with an EF mount and a Samyang 10mm T 3.1 lens. I absolutely love the results from this lens in film stock. The focal length is about a 28mm equivalent in full frame, and I think it suits 16mm wonderfully. I made a whole video about using cinema lenses on these old K3s. If you'd like to check it out, I'll leave a link up above and in the description, but it's pretty incredible the image quality you can get by throwing some modern glass on a 50-year-old camera. In the following month of May, two absolute gems of human beings came out to visit. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the power couple that is Brian and Emma. They flew out from the Midwestern city of St. Louis to come see what a real mountain looked like. So they were out here for a few days. I was showing them around Washington, playing tour guide, if you will, which I absolutely love to do. We started out by going to the town where I went to high school, Gig Harbor. The downtown area is just beautiful. It's built on a fishing community that dates back all the way to the 19th century. If you're ever visiting, you gotta go to the Tides Tavern. It's where all the adults went to get hammered and talk shit back when I was a kid, so I always wondered what it was like on the inside. When I turned 21, I went there and realized it's a pretty average restaurant where you have 100% chance of running into somebody from high school that you don't want to have a conversation with, which is probably why everyone there is just belligerently drunk the entire time. But it's still a place you gotta stop when you're in the area. We just kind of walked around the harbor, we took some photos. I was still rocking the M6, trying to channel the power of Father Greer himself. Wasn't really working for me, as you can tell from these photos. Most of these are hot garbage, but yeah, you know, still a fun day, hanging out with some friends, showing them an area that they're unfamiliar with. The next day, Alicia, Brian, Emma, and I ventured out to Leavenworth, Washington, which is a cool little Bavarian town nestled in the Cascade Mountains. I threw a roll of gold in my Pentax, and of course, I had to make a stop at the good old town car on the way out. We had a super fun day roaming around Leavenworth. We went to Icicle Brewing, which is Leavenworth's main craft beer brewery. They have some kick-ass beer there. Okay, I'm going to recommend the Alpenhaze IPA, the Enchantments Hazy IPA, the Dragon Tail IPA. All their hazy IPAs are just delicious. So you definitely got to stop at Icicle Brewing Company if you're in Leavenworth. But yeah, the rest of the day, we just kind of walked around. We went and checked out the Wenatchee River, which Brian and I, of course, did the inaugural head dunk in the river, which is mandatory at any river you go to in Washington. Okay, you gotta dunk the head in the river, get the brain freeze going. It's the only way to righteously set your footprint here on the Washington soil. And after that, Alicia and I went and kicked Brian and Emma's ass at mini golf. So that was probably the highlight of the whole trip and definitely gave me a large ego boost. The following day, Brian, Emma, and I were able to get in a trip to Crystal Mountain. We rode the gondola up to the top and had lunch at the summit, which is always a good time. If you're not going to get a Rainier beer while you're at the top, don't talk to me. It's required. Okay, rule number 1. All right, Brian and Emma's first time trying Rainier beer.
Actually pretty good.
Trash.
Watching Brian rock the 4x5 throughout the trip had my large format juices flowing, so I decided to bust out my Intrepid to try to snag a photo of Mount Rainier. I was hoping for a nice and clear day, but we ended up getting some cloud coverage. This was the first large format image I'd shot in over a year probably, so I was glad that I got something usable. On the last day of Brian and Emma's trip out to Washington, all 4 of us were kind of driving around Tacoma looking for photo opportunities for Brian's book that he's working on about classic cars and their owners. And I was driving them up to this iconic burger spot in Tacoma called Frisco Freeze. It's a very old school looking building, a lot of nostalgia, all the film shit, you know. And as we're pulling up, I'm kind of half joking with Brian. I'm like, if there's a classic car in this parking lot, man, you got the most ideal photo you could imagine. And sure enough, right as we pull up, there is a 1927 Ford Roadster, just beautifully redone, sitting in the most perfect parking spot of the whole establishment, and it was just meant to be. So Brian and I hopped out. We start talking to this guy, Kirk, who is just a total Renaissance guy, old school greaser, someone you definitely do not want to fuck with. Started having a conversation with him. Super nice guy. Had some very, very intriguing stories to tell, put it that way. Big chaw right in his lip. And yeah, we talked with him for a little bit. Brian got a couple of photos, and then on his way out, he says, hey, turn your camera on. You're going to want to get this. So he pulls out a Frisco Freeze and just lays the heaviest burnout in this Ford Roadster right in front of everyone. Middle of the day, just doesn't care, just blasts away, just blowing smoke. So yeah, very awesome encounter with Kirk. He was a pretty rad dude. Brian got a couple cool photos there. So that was a great way to wrap up the trip. Having Brian and Emma out was just an awesome time. Was able to show them a lot of local spots, a lot of places that me and my friends go. And yeah, they definitely loved Washington. We loved having them out here. And it's just really cool having that in-person encounter with somebody that you've met through the photo community. So thanks, Brian and Emma, for coming out. It was a pleasure. Can't wait to have you back out for some hiking next time around. Forgot to mention in the video that Brian made a super good recap of their trip out here. If you want to check it out, I'll put it up above and in the description. You should definitely watch it. It is fantastic. All right, time for more friends to visit. I met David down at the Beers and Cameras meetup in Joshua Tree this past March, and he hit me up while he was visiting a friend in Seattle, and we were able to slip out to the Olympics for a day. We went to a spot called Hurricane Ridge, which is a popular hike in the heart of the Olympics just outside the town of Port Angeles. This was actually my first time out here, and I was blown away by the views. Just prime views of the Strait of Juan de Fuca, Vancouver Island, and even Mount Baker. Now, unfortunately, these are probably the most atrocious photos of mine from the entire video. Really just no idea what I was thinking pressing the shutter on these. There's a couple that I don't mind. This one of the older couple is kind of cool and wholesome, and I got one of some deer that's all right. But yeah, I almost did the old tie a cinder block to my ankle and hop in the Pacific maneuver after I got these scans back, because holy smokes, just some of the shittiest work I've ever produced, and that's saying something. Now, David was whipping the X-Pan, and he got some pretty fun stuff while we were up there. That pano format is pretty tempting, I must say. I love seeing photos taken on the TX1s and the X-Pans. On the way back from Hurricane Ridge, we stopped at Paulsbo, which is a little Norwegian town that sits right on Liberty Bay. David shot some more stuff on the X-Pan, and he got this absolute gem of me, which I might mint into an NFT, make it a little 101, throw it up for like 69 ETH or something, just sell out, retire early, move to South America, start doing a shit ton of DMT. It's kind of sounding more and more appealing as the days go on, I'm not going to lie. All right, these last two ventures that ended up never turning into videos are both hikes. One was with Alicia and one was by myself. Alicia and I went out to Heather Lake, which is a really cool hike out near Granite Falls, Washington. It's a pretty mellow one and not too far from Seattle, so I definitely recommend it if you're ever visiting the area. We had an awesome day and I got some nice video footage, but again, just not stoked on the photos. I seriously need to stop shooting in the middle of the day, especially on these damn hikes. The trees and the mountains just cause all sorts of issues with harsh shadows, and the color temperature is just so nasty. But goddamn it, I just can't seem to help myself. This was my first time shooting with Cinestill 400D, and there were a couple of images that I didn't mind. I thought the colors were halfway decent for being in the middle of the day. The greens seemed to come through really strong, so I was definitely keen to shoot it again in better lighting conditions. I took a little plunge in the lake and it was nearly unbearably cold, but for some reason I just loved the feeling of almost dying and nearly drowning. So I hopped in a couple of more times and enjoyed a nice afternoon swim at Heather Lake. Speaking of dying, the last part in this failed video takes place at Jade and Marmot Lakes, which absolutely nuked me. I had a plan to spend 2 nights out at Jade Lake, which is just up from Marmot Lake, It's about a 21-mile hike round trip with 4,500 feet of elevation gain. With all of my camera and camping gear and food, my full pack weight was approaching 50 pounds, and by the time I got to the lake, my knees were fully fucked. I've had multiple knee injuries on both knees, 2 knee surgeries on my left knee, torn right ACL. So by the time I got to the lake after hiking 10 miles with that much weight on uneven ground, I just couldn't even walk anymore. I literally couldn't, I could barely bend either of my knees. My patella tendons were completely obliterated. And I had another mile to go and another 900 feet of elevation before I was even at Jade Lake, which was the place that I was supposed to camp at. I was just super discouraged and frustrated, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. I hung out at Marmot Lake for a little bit, hoping that my knees would start to feel better, but they only got worse, and I was able to get a few pictures that I think are actually halfway decent. I messed around with a few more self-portraits, which turned out all right. I was considering just spending the night up at Marmot Lake and hiking out the next day, hoping that my knees would be better, but I decided just to rip 2 Norcos and hike out that night, because the last thing I wanted to have happen was wake up the next day with 2 swollen knees that I couldn't walk on, which is exactly what ended up happening when I woke up in my bed the next morning. But yeah, it was the most miserable 21 miles I've ever hiked, and even with 2 Norcos in me, I was still aggressively struggling to hike out the 10 miles that night. I wasn't able to get up to Jade Lake, which really bummed me out. I wanted to hike up and over the pass to get a nice view of Pea Soup Lake and Mount Daniel, but I couldn't make it happen. But hopefully, once my knees, when my knees, a positive mentality, get better, I'll be able to get back out there and tackle it. Okay, that's going to wrap up the second installment of my failed video series. It's just nice to be transparent with you guys and let people know that not everything I make is that good. A lot of the times it's really shitty, and yeah, it's just not the way the world works. Not every time you go out to take photos or make a video or do anything creative, whatever it may be, is it going to pan out. It takes those failed attempts to be able to appreciate the successful ones. So hopefully this video kind of helped get that point across. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again. On social media, it's real easy to start feeling pretty shitty about yourself and your work. Please don't do that, because I feel very shitty about myself and my work a lot of the time as well. We're all in this together, all right? With that being said, thanks for rocking with me. Thanks for watching. Appreciate all the support as always. Hope everybody's having a good week. I'll catch you guys soon, all right? Take it easy. Peace.